So it was in the course of my reflection and Bible study on Cain and Abel that I found out that there is actually an existing debate on the skin color of Cain. Welcome back to my channel, and I am going to be talking about the story of Cain and Abel today. This video is going to be short, so we'll quickly run through, and then I'll tell you what all the drama in at the beginning of the video is all about. So now, if you know the story of Cain, I'm sure you know the story of Cain and Abel. But if you don't, let me give you a quick summary. So Adam and Eve, after they were chased out of the Garden of Eden, had kids. One named Abel, one named Cain. And Cain dealt with crops, while Abel was more like a headsman. He had flocks and all of that. So a time came when they wanted to offer some offerings to God, and Abel gave his best and the fat of it, while Cain's, well, according to the Bible, it clearly was not as well thought out as Abel's offering, and this made God to honor and respect and accept the offering of Abel. Cain got jealous and killed his brother. Now I'm seeing some similarities here because when God asked Abel, or Cain rather, what happened and where his brother was, he was just like, am I supposed to be my brother's keeper? He didn't answer the question directly. He was trying to deflect. But God, being God, he already knew what happened and quizzed him about it and then proceeded to curse him. Now, I find the nature of God's curses to be very, very creative because what he told Cain, and I don't want us to listen to this carefully because this is the second recorded incidence of God's curses. And again, it opened my eyes to see how a curse really is just the direct opposite of God's blessings or the direct opposite of God's will for us. For instance, he caused Cain's efforts. He also caused Cain that he will be a vagabond and a fugitive, basically a wanderer with no place to call home. And of course, to this, Cain protested and said, hey, this is too much for me. The punishment you gave me is too much. So after Cain protested, God also promised that he will not be killed. That in fact, anyone that tries to kill him will be punished 7 times. Basically, placed a mark on Cain, which I, from reading the Bible, saw as a protective mark. But apparently, there is a whole different conversation about it. Because in the course of my study on this story, I wasn't thinking about the mark, I was thinking about the curse and how significant it was and how it was clearly a division from God's original plan for man. For instance, causing Cain to be a fugitive and basically a wanderer. For me, I saw it as the opposite of what God's will was, which is keeping us in His presence, as evidenced in the Garden of Eden originally, and even till now, as you know, latter Christians, we know that God's plan for us is for us to remain in His will and for us to remain in His presence. So that was the first thought that came to my head when I saw that part of Him, being cursed to be wandering or roaming about. And I think I was validated because when Cain protested to God, he said he's taking his face away from him and he's driving him out of his presence, which really, really confirms my thoughts there. If you remember in the Garden of Eden, they were surrounded by plants. This is literally where God, created everything that He created. He had a variety of trees, animals, and anything basically for their enjoyment. And this is the same kind of curse, almost the same kind of curse that his father Adam was cursed when he was chased out of the Garden of Eden. And we see God replicating this in the life of Cain by basically cursing him that, look, you will till the ground and to yield no effort. Meanwhile, God created the earth to be full of plenty. Again, see how this causes a division from God's will. Now, I find it interesting that while carrying out my Bible study, people were not discussing this. Instead, they were thinking. In fact, there are two schools of thoughts right now. There are those who believe that the mark that God placed on Cain, yes, God did place a mark on Cain in order to make it impossible for anyone to harm him or to kill him. So there are some who believe that this mark was physical, like a tattoo or whatever, and there are some who believe that this mark was spiritual, basically like a spiritual covering or whatever. And then there are those who believe that this was at the point that God turned Cain black. And I'm wondering, how did such thoughts even come into your head? Because at what point in that story, if you read your Bible, will you even the issue of race ever come up? I'm still trying to wrap my head around this. And this is the reason, guys, why we all need to read our Bibles for ourselves and search the word for ourselves. Because if we keep listening to these kind of ridiculous conversations or people trying to explain the Bible beyond what it actually is, you're going to deviate. You're actually going to get sidetracked and you're going to miss the point of the Bible and the lessons it's trying to communicate. Now, another thing I found interesting is that particular, covering that or mark that God placed on him that made it impossible to kill him. It's very interesting because if you read down the other books of the, Bible, as you read down the other books of the Bible and follow the story of the children of Israel, you would actually see that at the time Moses comes in and he's giving the laws, you see something that looks like an eye for an eye. So I'm wondering why God decided to protect Cain like that. He killed his brother. It's bad enough that he offered a shoddy offering to God. He took the step further by allowing envy to consume him and then killing his brother. A serious thing as murder. Anyway, I think the main takeaway in this story of Cain and Abel is this: what a curse is that is a deviation from the will of God for us and is just a direct opposite of God's blessings. From what I can see, this is the second recorded incidence of curses, and specifically God cursing someone. And it has followed a pattern. Basically, someone deviated from God's will and God cursed him, or he began to suffer from a curse. Now, what this means is that we, as Christians, especially for those of us in my part of the world, Nigeria, where the word curse is always flying about and people, often are quick to attribute a particular problem to a curse, whether generational or not. From this now, I can see that there has been a pattern so far. Someone did not stay in God's will or did not, do broke one of God's commands, and here you have it. I dare say, and it might be early or naive of me to think like this, but if you're in God's will, it's impossible for you to be suffering under a curse, suffering from a curse or to be under the bondage of a curse. Because from the look of things, these incidents of curses happened only because someone did not do what they were supposed to do, or they deviated from God's will, or deviated from the presence of God, or deviated from God's instructions. So I think for me, this has brought a lot more clarity on what curses really are and how we actually have an irrational fear of curses. Stay in God's will, continue to abide by His word and in His presence. And I don't think curses is something Christians should, necessarily have in their dictionary. Now, is there something like generational curses? Yes. But I'm sure as we explore the Bible further, we're going to see other incidences. Probably see incidences of someone suffering from the curse of the father, and we'll get more insights from the Bible.